We're moving from the Old Testament to the New Testament this Sunday. And we've spent lots of time in May, a little bit in May, some in June, July, and August. We looked at David's life. And we spent a lot of time analyzing David's life. We saw the ups and downs of his ministry, the up and downs of his work with God. We saw him defeat Goliath by trusting in God and saying, God will give this uncircumcised Philistine into my hands. And we saw him defeat Goliath, and we're like, yeah, David. We saw him in his lows when he committed adultery with Bathsheba, and we're like, come on, man, you know this better. And hopefully, as we walk through David's life, as we look through the different aspects of his life, as we saw his ups and downs, the things he did well, the things he did poorly, I hope you gleaned something from his life. But we're moving now from the second most written about person in the Bible, who is David. We're moving now to the most written about person in the Bible, who is Jesus. And since September is the month in which I was born, I want to make September special. I love September. September is always a great time. Originally, I was going to do a discussion on dreams, but we're going to be putting out in October. This is a bit of a preview. So September, we're doing my favorite stories from the Gospels, whether they're parables, whether they're stories of things Jesus actually does, my favorite stories. But in October, we're going to be discussing dreams and how God can speak to us through dreams. And with that, we're going to be doing a class on Thursday nights through Zoom or Google Hangouts, whichever one people are more accustomed to, a class on how to understand what God might be saying to you through your dreams. So this is coming in October. We'll be doubling up on dreams, a Sunday morning teaching, as well as Thursday night class. And in September, we're doing my favorite parables about Jesus, because they're easy, really easy to preach out of these parables, because I like these. This is the fastball down the middle of the plate, just swing real hard, and then something good's going to happen. I love these stories. These are my favorite stories, the stories I've connected with the most. They're easy to preach about. They're relevant. They're really encouraging. And I know working through David's life, working through the Old Testament might be a slog for some people. It might be like, oh. I'd like to give you a bit of a break before we jump into the matter of dreams. So Jesus stories and parables is a good break for all of us. And before I get into that story, I want to share with you a story from when I played football in high school. I played football in high school because God built me like a football player. I realize now, looking back, if I could talk to 16, 14-year-old me, I'd be like, dude, go play basketball. You like running. You can do this. Play basketball. Play baseball. I would have probably been decent at baseball. I could have been a backup on the varsity and actually played. Focus on track. I actually did track and then stopped because I got sick of running. But I was like, no, I'm going to play football. I'm going to be a football player. And I was the backup to the backup. The most exciting moment was when we were in high school career, was when we were playing our rival. Grapevine High School was our rival. And coach, we were real close at the end of the game. We're down by 2 points. And he goes, Steery. And I'm like standing right behind him. I put my helmet on. I'm like, what, coach? What is it? And he goes, find Fleming. I need him. And I went, and this guy was a two-way. He was our starting tight end and our starting defensive end. This guy's like this big and this wide. And so I go over, I'm like, Patrick, and he's sweating buckets. He's sitting by the fan. He's drinking water. He's like, what? I said, coach wants you. And he goes, ugh. I'm like, I'm rested. I'm ready to go. No, but you're not any good. That's the problem. But when I played high school football, when I was a sophomore, I played on the defensive line because, again, I'm built like a defensive lineman. I was good in middle school because I was tall. And you could do, like, I could just grab people and sling them to the ground because they were like this tall in middle school. High school, everybody caught up to me. But I was a sophomore, and we had the junior varsity and the varsity practice together. We were their punching bags. We were their tackling dummies. Coaches would give us a ball and be like, here, run to this cone. And we're like, okay. And then all of a sudden, blam, some guy who was a foot taller and 100 pounds heavier than you would just blast you into the next century. But when I was on the junior varsity team, we were going through these drills. We were doing a drill here. You'd have to go step through these. And the coach comes up to me because he could tell I was kind of responsible. He comes to me and he goes, Steery, I'm going to go over there and I'm going to set up this drill. He said, now it's on this third field over there. When everybody comes back after they're done running this drill, I want you to tell these guys and I want you to tell the varsity, we're going to be on that field doing this exercise. I said, okay, I can do that. And so we got done doing the exercise. Coach had left. And the varsity guys, who were all bigger, had beards, multiple children, wives, I go, okay, guys, Coach wants us to go to that third field. And they look down at me and they're like, we're not going to do that. Why should we listen to you? You're on the backup to the junior varsity. You're like the B team of the JV. Like, we're not going to do that. And I said, well, Coach really wants us to go over there. That's where we're supposed to be going. He's setting up something over there. We need to go. They're like, we're not doing that. I was like, okay. So I went to my other guys. Okay, we got to go. Coach wants us over there. And they, okay. So we jog over there. And we get over there, and Coach starts ripping into me. Steery, I told you to tell. Why didn't you blah, blah? And I go, whoa, whoa, whoa. I told him. And the other guys are with me. He told him. Yes, absolutely right. So Coach goes over to these guys and starts. I could hear them fields away. My coach, I told you to blah, blah. You didn't listen. And so these varsity guys are kind of, their heads are hanging, and they look at me, and they get mad at me. Like it's my fault they didn't listen. Right, okay, whatever. But that was one of my first experiences with delegated authority. I had no authority to give these guys who were older and better and on the varsity team any direction. However, I was under the command of my coach to do this. He was working through me to accomplish his goal, even though that goal was frustrated by his own players. And the issue of authority is the core of what we're looking at here in Matthew 8. And if you're in Matthew 8, we're in the story of the faith of the Centurion. And in the first verse we're looking at, Matthew 8:5. When he, and this is about Jesus, when he entered Capernaum, a centurion came forward to him and appealed to him. Now Capernaum, if you're speaking Greek, it's Capernaum, but we say Capernaum because we're lazy. Capernaum is a city on the north coast of the Lake of Galilee. It's not a very large town. It's about 1,500 people. But it had been inhabited for about 200 years by the time that Jesus was there. And it was continuously inhabited for another 1,000 years after Jesus. So this small town of about 1,500 people was inhabited for 1,200 years. And Capernaum was a city that Jesus visited very often during his ministry. If you look in the Gospels, Jesus spends lots of time in Capernaum. It's in Galilee. And if we look in Matthew 4:13, and leaving Nazareth, he went and lived in Capernaum by the sea in the territory of Zebulun and Naphtali. So this is giving you a bit of a picture. If you know Middle Eastern geography at all, you know where the Dead Sea is? The Jordan River runs down north to south into the Dead Sea. It runs from Lake Galilee through the Jordan River down into the Dead Sea. So this is in the northeast part of Israel. And the verse says he lived there. He lived in Capernaum, which is sort of like implies that either he was staying with somebody or he had a house there. Jesus was a carpenter. He had a business. But later in Matthew 4, he meets Simon, later called Peter, and Andrew. He meets James and John in the same region as Capernaum. So Jesus and his core early followers were from the same sort of group of fishing towns. This is a place that was very popular for Jesus' ministry. He was a light in the darkness. If you read just 3 verses later, it says, quoting Isaiah, that Jesus was the light in the dark places in Capernaum. And in Matthew 11, if you continue reading on, Jesus actually denounces the city because he did so many miracles there. And this is fascinating. If you look later, Jesus says, if Sodom and Gomorrah had seen the same miracles that you'd seen, they'd still be around. They would have repented thousands of years ago. They'd still be around because I've done so many miracles here. But you guys are hard-hearted. You're ignoring what I'm saying. So this means not only did he do a lot of miracles, but the people of Capernaum did not translate those miracles into faith. Well, not all of them, as we'll see here in Matthew 8. In Capernaum, a centurion approaches Jesus and asks for healing. He entered Capernaum. A centurion came forward to him and appealed to him and said, Lord, my servant is lying paralyzed at home, suffering terribly. Now, how many of you here know what a centurion is? There you go, a couple of you. Good. A centurion was an officer in the Roman army. He had, because it's century, he had about just under 100 soldiers under his command. If he were in the U.S. Army, he would have been a lieutenant or a captain. So pretty high up. I have a friend who is a captain, and he spent a lot of time in the military. And the centurion approaches Jesus for healing, not for himself. Please notice this here. He is not coming because he needs healed. He is coming to Jesus because his servant needs healed. And this servant was someone who lived in the centurion's home, and his job was to take care of the stuff in the centurion's house. Kind of like a butler. Or possibly, we don't know because this Greek word for servant is the same word we translate slave. So it could have been a person that he owned that was indebted to him, or it could have been a servant that he paid. But in either case, this servant, whether this was a paid employee or whether this was a house slave, he was injured and sick and was paralyzed. And as the centurion said, he was suffering terribly. This guy's in pain. He cries all the time. My heart goes out to him. I care for him. He's important to me. He's important to my house working properly. And he's in pain. He's crying, Jesus, I need you to do something about this. And the centurion has compassion on his servant. He hates what he sees. He can't bear to watch his servant suffer the immense pain that he's going through. And he's paralyzed. Think about this. Not only is he in pain, it's terrible to be in pain. But he's paralyzed, so he's just laying there. He can't get up. He can't walk around. He can't sit there and go somewhere else. He's just laying there, crying and hurting. And the love the centurion has for his servant compelled him to seek out Jesus. He said, I can't. This is not getting fixed. It's not getting any better. I need to see Jesus. Lord, my servant is lying paralyzed at home. I need you to do something. And of course, Jesus says, yeah, of course. I will come and I will heal him. Jesus is touched by the compassion this centurion has. Maybe it was the sadness in his voice or how passionately he spoke. We just get one, Lord, my servant is sick. He obviously said more than that, but Matthew's just truncating it and saying, he brought this matter to Jesus. Something made Jesus say, even as he's surrounded by sick people. Think of how many sick people there are in Jesus' time. There is not modern medicine. There are people dying all around Jesus, sick with terrible diseases all around Jesus. Something made him say, this guy needs me to act on his behalf. I will take time out of my day. I have people to teach. I have bread to multiply. I have water to walk on. But I'm going to come help your servant because you have touched my heart with your appeal. Now I'm going to take a moment here to share why this story fascinates me so much. Jesus here is responding to the faith and confidence of the centurion. But please notice here, as we look at this story in verses 5 and 6, the faith is not for the centurion himself. The centurion's not saying, I am sick, I am hurting, I need help. He's saying, my employee, my servant, the guy in my house, he's sick and he needs you to do something. The centurion has enough confidence in Jesus to get Jesus moving, so to speak. Even though the one with faith is not the one getting healed. And I'll come back to this later, but this passage challenges our understanding of faith. A lot of times we want to say, God, I need a lot of faith for something for myself, which is true. You should be believing in God for stuff for yourself. Your faith should move God on your own behalf. We think faith is a personal matter. It's between me and God. But here, the faith of one man influences the healing received by another. The servant, and spoiler alert, the servant gets healed because the master seeks healing and has faith. Let me indulge myself here for a minute and give some application. This means that our faith not only benefits our own spiritual lives, but our faith can, if developed, benefit and bless and help those around us. If this centurion in this story can and does seek healing for his servant based on his own faith, then what can I, your pastor, do for you with my faith? Because in some sense, I am in responsibility over you. What can I do for you based on my faith? Let me stretch you a little bit. What about me? I'm coming back to this. What about me for my kids? I tell you, I pray for my kids all the time. I pray for their salvation. I pray that God would lead them either firmly into the ministry and give them the strength to do it, or firmly away from the ministry. Because even with the calling to ministry, this job is difficult. What can I do for my kids? I pray for my kids. I pray for their spouses. I pray for their marriages. I pray my kids wouldn't get divorced, wouldn't have to suffer through that. I pray for my kids' kids. I pray that they would have, I pray for my kids' kids' kids. I pray for generations down the line. God, if you put me in a position of authority over my children, I'm going to bless, and I'm going to bless, and I'm going to bless, and I'm going to get to heaven, and you're going to say, here are all the thousands of people that you blessed just by praying for 10 generations out. I pray that 10 generations out from me, my children, and their great, whatever it is, 7 greats I think it is, that all of them would be saved. Every child, 10 generations out, because they're tied to me. Think about this for my wife. I'm a husband. How does my spiritual position as her husband, how can I bless her? How can I impart peace and blessing and joy and strength into my wife based on the position of responsibility I have for my wife? I believe I do have some. I believe wives have responsibility over their husbands. Amen? How can you bless your spouse? With your faith. Because if this passage teaches us anything, it's that you have some authority and responsibility over them and can bless them and seek healing and favor for them, even if they don't have it for themselves. Now think about yourself for a second. What can you do with your faith? Not only can you have faith for blessings for yourself, God, I need healing. God, I need strength. God, I need peace and joy and love and the patience to do my job, to be a parent, to be a husband. Who are you in relationship with that you can use your faith to bless, to heal, to strengthen, to encourage? You got a spouse? I'm looking at quite a few of you who got spouses. What can you do for your spouse with your faith? Mark, Meredith, John. Do you have kids? You got grandkids? Russ, I know you do. What can you do with your faith for them? Can you pray for their salvation? Does God hear your prayers for their salvation, even though they might not be your kids and they're just your grandkids? I bet you he does. You got employees? Got fellow followers of people in your church? Can you bless them? Do you have some authority over the other people here? You bet you do, and you can bless them. What can you go to Jesus for on their behalf? What do they need your faith to excite Jesus to action for? Let's get back to the story. Get a little preachy there. Take it back a bit. Jesus says in verse 7, I'll come and I'll heal him. I love this verse in Spanish. It's 3 words. Iré y sanaré. It's I will come and I will heal him. Future tense. I actually learned more in Spanish reading the Spanish Bible. Jesus says, I'll come and I'll heal him. Verse 8. This is a trip. The first part's easy to preach out of. This is where it gets better. If you thought the first part was great, you just wait for the second part. Matthew 8:8. The centurion stops him and says, hold up, Jesus. Look what he says. Lord, I am not worthy to have you come under my roof, but only say the word and my servant will be healed. He says, you don't have to come to my house. Just say something here. Just say, heal him. Just say, be healed from this distance. Just think it, God. And this baffles me in this story because this seems so ridiculous. Jesus is coming to your house and you tell him to stop? If Jesus said, I will come to your house, it'd be like, yes, and you will stay a while. Let's make up the guest bed. No, I'll sleep on the couch. You sleep in go touch stuff, Jesus. Just sit in this chair. Go sit on this couch. Touch all my Jesus, do you want, touch the water. Bless the water. Make that water into wine thing. Do that real quick. I'll get some bottles ready. Touch everything, Jesus. Bless my kids. Sit there and play with my kids. Touch everything. Stay a while, man. Just having Jesus in your house would be such a blessing. And I'm sure this guy knows it. Having Jesus in your house would be so awesome. But he's like, no, no, no. You don't get to take time out of your day, Jesus. Don't even bother walking to my house. Just say it from here. Lord, I'm not worthy to have you enter my house. And he recognizes on some level the holiness of Jesus. He sees his own lack of holiness and says, I'm not worthy. Jesus, you're so awesome. You're so amazing. You don't even got to come to my house. I'm not worthy. My house isn't worthy. Nobody here is. And then he expresses the depth of his confidence in Jesus' authority. Just say the word and he'll be healed. Just say it, Lord. Just say, let him be healed. You don't got to touch him. Think about that. You don't have to touch him. You don't even have to look at him. You don't even have to have a conceptual idea of where he is or what bed he's laying on. We got to think, all right, if Jesus is going to move, he needs to kind of know what the guy looks like, where he is, in which house he is, in what part of this. No, he's like, you don't even have to. You can just say it and it'll get to the right person. Jesus commands healing based on a request I made. This is like, and I compare this is like the inverse of the woman who touched Jesus' robe. Remember, she's like, oh, I need to go touch his robe. And Jesus responds in faith to that. She pushed through the crowd because she's got the issue of blood. She pushes through the crowd and touched Jesus' robe. I got to reach out and I got to touch him. This guy's like, you don't even got to touch him, Jesus. You don't even have to smell him. You don't even have to understand who it is. Just say something. This guy has faith. Jesus can heal someone at long range. Just say the word, Jesus, and healing will happen. And this makes me reevaluate prayer over video chat and on the phone. We do our small groups through Zoom. And I always feel awkward praying at the end of it. Because it's like, well, they're not here. I don't have people I can hold hands with. I pray with people on the phone. I can't even see them. It's like, okay, Lord, bless this person, and you start looking around your house and you get distracted. No. I have prayed for hundreds of people online and on the phone, and I always feel awkward. Is this doing any good? They're not right here. Can I bless somebody really over the phone? This centurion's faith challenges that. He says he would disagree with my sentiments. The reason why is in verse 9. He's explaining to Jesus why he can heal at a distance. For I too am a man under authority, with soldiers under me, and I say, go, and he goes, and another, come here, and he comes, and my servant do this, and he does it. The centurion explains his own chain of command as it relates to authority. And then he parallels that authority and command to Jesus. The centurion starts off by saying, I too am a man under authority, and that's key. He starts off by saying, I too am a man under authority. And that's sort of what the opposite of what we'd expect. Not I have authority, but I am under authority. Note the difference here because it's critical to his understanding of Jesus. The centurion notes that he is also under authority, meaning that he says, I too am a man under authority, which means Jesus is a man under authority. Somebody's over Jesus. Who has authority over Jesus? It's Jesus, right? He can do whatever he wants. No, Jesus is a man under authority. Who is Jesus operating under authority? His Father. The Father has authority over Jesus. The centurion acknowledges God the Father is Jesus' commanding officer. And this centurion, who on some level believed in God, recognizes that Jesus is operating under the Father's authority. Jesus wasn't a magician. He wasn't some spiritual guru who went out in the desert and had an experience. He wasn't operating under his own authority. He was operating under the authority of the God, God the Father. And side note, if you look in John 5, Jesus says the same thing. John 5, Jesus says, I can do nothing but what I see the Father doing. I only do what he tells me to. He's my boss. I'm under his authority. Where he sends me, I go. And the result of Jesus being under God's authority is that he has authority as well. Jesus is following his commander's orders, which gives him authority, which is why he's able to wield authority over sickness and death, multiplying food and nature. And this centurion says, I have soldiers under me. I say jump. They say, how high? You have authority too, Jesus. Even over sickness, over the whole human body. You say be healed. It says, yes, sir. And this is why the centurion comes to Jesus asking for healing. He knows Jesus has authority over sickness. Whatever his servant is suffering with, Jesus has authority over that sickness. He is confident Jesus can exercise that authority on his behalf. And he knows that expressing confidence in Jesus, faith in Jesus, will stimulate Jesus to act on his behalf. Think about this. Would Jesus have healed his servant if he wouldn't have asked for it? Probably not. Was he still sick? Did Jesus still love him? Absolutely. But he had to ask for it to get it. He had to have faith Jesus could do something. He had to ask him for it. And then he had to have faith that Jesus could command healing at a distance. And look at how Jesus responds. I love this response. Verse 10. When Jesus heard this, he marveled. He marveled. He was amazed and said to those who followed him, truly I tell you, with no one in Israel have I found such faith. Jesus was amazed. He was impressed with this guy's faith. For Jesus, this was a breath of fresh air during his time on earth. You guys remember the story when Jesus, right after the transfiguration, comes down and the other 10 disciples are trying to heal the guy with the demon, the guy's kid with the demon? And they're like, Lord, we tried to cast out this demon and we just couldn't do it. Does Jesus say, well, that's okay, we understand? No. What does he call them? He says in Matthew 17:17, the first word he uses to describe them is faithless. You faithless generation. You have no faith. And these are the disciples. These are the apostles. These are the big 12. He says, you have no faith. He was so used to faithlessness. I would argue then that in light of this, Jesus is marveled. Jesus is impressed. It's like I said, a breath of fresh air. It's like walking into your house after you've been outside for an hour. Sitting under the fan. Man, this is great. He loves it. He hears this guy's faith. The guy, he's impressed that the guy says, Jesus, I need you to come heal her. Okay, yeah. Thank you for expressing faith. I like it. And the guy says, no. You don't even have to come to my house. Just say the word, and he'll be healed at a distance. And Jesus is going, I've been waiting for somebody like you. He marveled and said, with no one in Israel have I found such faith. Faith is impressive. Faith is refreshing. God likes it when we have faith. Look at Hebrews 11. Hebrews 11:6. Without faith, it is impossible to please him. You can't make God happy without faith. For whoever would draw near to God must believe he exists and that he rewards those who seek him. That he gives good gifts to his kids because they seek him. And they want to draw near to him. And in faith they say, God, I need this. Would you please provide this? And God says, absolutely, I will. Or he'll say no, and here's why, and here's what I'm going to give you instead. So expressing faith in God makes him happy. He loves it. And the centurion didn't just have some faith. This guy had lots of faith. Faith above and beyond what other people had. This is a big prayer. Heal my servant. Not me. Heal this other guy at a distance. Sight unseen. Condition unknown. And Jesus is so amazed, he says, not even in Israel have I found faith like this. And he's comparing this guy's faith. This guy's likely a Gentile, likely an outsider. He's comparing it to the Jewish nation, who he says they should know better. They really should have been reading their books, the whole Old Testament, and said, yeah, God's kind of a big deal. He rewards faith. We should be acting out in more faith. And that's why if you look in verses 11 and 12, he says, there are many here who are they're slacking off. They're not doing what they're supposed to. And Jesus says, this guy, he gets it. And he compares them to people who basically grew up in church. The Old Testament is filled with examples of God's healing power. The Bible verse that my kids are memorizing this month is Exodus 15:26, which says, I am the Lord who heals you. Exodus 15:26, I am the Lord who heals you. God promises that. And so the people of Israel who have these texts should have expressed this type of faith. And it's like Jesus is saying, this is why I love this story in Matthew 8. It's like Jesus is saying, here's somebody who gets it. This is what I like. I love this type of people. I'm amazed by them. I love them. They make me happy. This guy understands my authority, my relationship with God, my work, and this is such a rare thing to find someone who grasps even a small bit of the nature of who Jesus was and the power at his disposal. And Jesus appreciates that. He loves it. It is a rare treasure to him. I can just, looking at Jesus, I see him go, like, I love it. Look at verse 13. Look how he ultimately responds to this centurion. He says, go, let it be done for you as you have believed. What you asked for, I'm going to do it. And the servant was healed at that very moment. Let it be done for you as you have believed. I have to do something for this guy. I have to reward his faith. The servant is healed, and the centurion is commended. And what I want to focus on in this passage is the central issue, is the faith the centurion has. The centurion, on some level, understood who Jesus was. He may not have understood that Jesus was the Son of God, the Messiah, but he knew Jesus was a man under God's authority. And he grasped on some level the great power available to Jesus. Because Jesus was under God's authority, he could exercise God's great authority. Because he listened to God, God was like, here's some authority, go use it. And part of that authority was that Jesus could heal at a distance, sight unseen. And the centurion requested that some of that power be used on his behalf. And that faith and that confidence in Jesus, expressed in asking, would bring about a result. And basically, he had the confidence that he just needed to ask Jesus. If he asked Jesus for something, Jesus would do it. Now, taking this text and applying it is relatively simple. In expressing faith and confidence in God to act, ideally we need to do a couple things. First, we need to grasp the authority that Jesus has. Grasp, and I wanted to use the word understand, but if I say understand, you think you need to understand it all. Oh, no, 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 no. Just a little bit of it. Grasp. Just touch a small amount of it. And the stress here is not on who Jesus is. When the centurion reaches faith, he doesn't say, oh, Jesus, you're the Son of David, you're the Son of God, you're the Messiah. He says none of that. He just says, you're under God's authority. He understood the power and authority that Jesus had. And a lot of us get this backwards. We're ready to call Jesus the Son of God. We're ready to call him the Messiah or the Christ. That's not his name, that's his title, Jesus the Messiah, Jesus Christ. We're ready to call him Lord, but we're not really sure that he can do anything. Yeah, he can save me and take me to heaven. But is he really going to do anything else? How much authority does he have? Or if he has authority, we're not really certain he'll use it for us. Well, Jesus, we know you have lots of authority. We know you have lots of power. But are you going to do anything for me? And ideally, this is where I'll depart from the text a little bit, we should do both. We should both believe in his person. We should say, yes, Jesus, you're the Son of God, King of kings, Lord of lords. You're the guy in charge. You're at God's right hand. You're mighty, you're powerful and great, and you're going to do something for me. And we believe that your authority is so good that you'll bless me, you'll bless my family, you'll bless my church, you'll bless my job, my city. How far does it go? What do you think God will say to us if we believe in his nature, but ignore or refuse to access his power and authority? If we believe he exists, but we don't think he's going to do anything. Does that kind of faith make him happy? It might get you to heaven, but I guarantee you it doesn't make him happy. We need to grasp the authority that Jesus has, and we need to believe his power and authority applies to our situation. We need to believe that Jesus can do something about the situation we find ourselves in. As the centurion did when he asked Jesus for healing. He said, I think you can do something about this sick guy I've got, God. Right? This is a big step, but necessary for our faith. We need to believe that Jesus can do something, will do something. And I would say he would like to do something. He would like to do something about our problems, help us with them. Why call him King of Kings and Lord of Lords and then think that he doesn't care about us? This is the final step. I'll leave it with this. You need to ask him to do something. Ask him to act. The centurion knew Jesus was a man of authority and could heal at a distance. But only when he asked Jesus to act did Jesus do anything. And if we're going to ask Jesus, if we're going to get Jesus to act on our behalf, whether it's individuals or as a church, we need to believe and we need to ask him to do what we need him to do. Whether that's healing, whether that's babies, whether that's growth, whether that's for salvations. We need to know that this is an area over which God has authority. What part of our life, what part of our church, what part of our communities does God not have control over? Does God not have authority over? Find one. There aren't any. Jesus says, Matthew 28:18, all authority has been given to me. Right? Not some. All authority. He has authority over the government, over our families, over our finances, over our churches, over our towns and counties. So we need to ask him to act, pray, seek him, and request that he uses authority on our behalf. I think a lot of the problem in our churches and with the church in general is that we don't ask him for stuff. James chapter 4 says, you do not have because you do not ask. So to get very specific with you this morning, what is an area of your life? What is something in your sphere of influence that you need Jesus to do something? Do you need salvation for somebody near you? A brother, a sister, a child? Do you need a better marriage? Do you need strength to go back to a job that you're just, sucks the life out of you? Do you need peace in your house? Do you need growth in your church? Guys, I'm praying big prayers. And I know that sometimes God doesn't answer right away, but I'm confident that he'll answer. He'll either say, yes, here it is, wait, here it is, or no, here's what I'm going to give you instead. So as we look at faith this morning, what are you needing to exercise faith for? I'm serious. I want you to think of something. I'm going to give you a minute. Talk to God. And ask him to prompt you, to encourage you, to help you, to exercise your faith, to step out in faith. And ask God for something that you need. I'll give you a minute. Lord, I think in my own life of my needs. And Lord, I pray for salvation first and foremost for my children. I love those 3 little balls of energy. I pray for salvation for Seth and for Natalie and for Ben. I ask that you would reveal yourself to them, that you would show them that they need you, and that you would save them from a young age and let them follow you their whole life. Lord, I pray for all the children in our church. I pray for their salvations from a young age. Lord, I pray for strength in marriages here. God, I pray for growth in our church. I thank you for the new families we have. I thank you for the new people we have. I ask that you would increase that tenfold. I thank you for those who have been faithful. And I ask that you would encourage them for for the faithfulness they've shown. Lord, for couples who are wanting children in our church, I ask for those couples to have babies soon. God, I ask for healing for those who are sick. I think of Ray, who's dealing with cancer. God, I ask for healing for his body from the top of his head to the tip of his toes. Lord, extend your healing hand to Ray and touch him. Drive out that cancer and let him resume ministry, God. Lord, I think of those who are grieving in our church, and I ask them that as they mourn, that you would comfort them. And God, for each of us here who need a touch from you, who need an experience of you, God, you will respond positively. I ask that you would meet us where we are, that you would reveal yourself to us and help us, encourage us, and walk with us in a new and powerful way. And I pray this in Jesus' name. Amen.